So why did India agree to a ceasefire, especially when we seem like we were on the front foot with Pakistan? This is a question a lot of people are asking. Is it a sign of weakness on India's part? Does it make India look weak? That's the question I'm going to answer in 5 simple points in this video. But first, I want to give you some context and perspective as to why I'm talking about this. Now, to begin with, the hostilities have formally ended between India and Pakistan, which also means that the people and the civilians who are living in our border states of Jammu and Kashmir, Rajasthan, Punjab, Gujarat are heaving a sigh of relief because they're not afraid in the night, huddled with their children in blackouts, wondering if, the attack is going to fall on their houses. And for the rest of us and the rest of the country who are worried about our loved ones and our friends and our family who live in those border states, we're also relieved that that is not a possibility, at least not as much as it was a couple of days ago. While that is the case, on social media, if you look at social media, there are people who are extremely disappointed, they're angry, they're baying for blood, and they want to know why India didn't press forward. Now, these are normally, interestingly, voices that tend to support the Modi government or the BJP, who seem to be questioning it at this point. There's one question that said, oh, this feels a bit anticlimactic to quit when we are ahead. There's another voice that says, as long as these terrorists are alive, ceasefire makes no sense. These are interestingly members associated with the BJP or part of the BJP. One person said India should have annexed Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, and until we take it over, the war should continue. Someone else said that if the Prime Minister is strong, he should deliver a, I'm quoting, final solution to the Pakistan problem. They should eradicate jihadism. They should crush Pakistan. It goes on like this. Erase Pakistan from the face of the world map is another suggestion that has been made on social media. Apart from the fact that these suggestions are completely devoid of any logic, completely devoid of any understanding of diplomacy, of foreign affairs, of military action, and how India deals with matters like this, they were also hateful. They went after, for example, Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri, who very patiently was giving us information through this entire thing. I want to remind you that the Foreign Secretary has 35 years of experience as a bureaucrat and has served the country and is a very talented bureaucrat. Not only him, but also his family was being trolled. His daughter was being trolled by people who are obviously charged up by nonsense that they are watching on television, charged up by nonsense that they are reading on WhatsApp. And they seem to think that this is a way to deal with the problem with, like I said, any sort of perspective on how India normally handles issues like this. I also want to remind you that these people trolled the widow of one of the victims of Pahalgam, who suggested that peace might be an option. They just went after her as well, asking if now India is weak for accepting a ceasefire. And that is the thing that I want to examine at this point. And I'll give you 5 points like I promised at the beginning. Point number 1 is our objective. India has repeatedly said that we were never at war with Pakistan. We are at war with terror. India's stated objective was to dismantle terror infrastructure. Shashi Tharoor has made a very interesting statement on this as well. It might make sense to check it out. But effectively, we've had our ambassador to the US, we've had the Foreign Secretary, Mr. Misri, and several other of our members of the armed forces who gave us press conferences, who told us very clearly, including the Prime Minister in his statement, who said India's stated objective was to dismantle terror. We were never at war with Pakistan. Now, with that stated objective, we actually found our targets. Our armed forces aimed for those targets, destroyed them. They've actually provided us with evidence of the destruction that was actually carried out during these strikes, done so in a very measured way, and those targets have been achieved. It was never our target to be at a long drawn out war with Pakistan. Pakistan decided to stand with the terrorists and respond to us, and then India took a measured response to Pakistan as well, but it was never our point to get into a war with Pakistan. Now, a lot of people are, comparing this to 1971, and I want to point out who's done this actually, members of the opposition. We've had Jairam Ramesh, for example, who shared Indira Gandhi's 1971 letter to then US President Richard Nixon, where she clearly said India's stance was not for ceasefire. And 4 days later, he said Pakistan surrendered, and she ensured that India got that victory. Now, it's not fair to compare these two instances, because at that point, the stated objective for India was to liberate East Pakistan, what is now Bangladesh. Here, the stated objective for India was to dismantle terror and terror infrastructure, sending a message saying you cannot cross the border, or you cannot send terrorists across the border to actually hurt our civilians, and cross the border and now you're okay. As long as you manage to get back into Pakistan, now you're okay. We've sent a message saying we will not hesitate to cross international borders, to cross the line of control and get to those terrorists if we have to. That message has been sent in loud and clear. We've showed no restraint when it comes to that. And based on the evidence that has been shared with us in the press conferences, India has hit places where terrorists are being trained, where terrorists were being armed, where terrorists were being financed, sending a clear message that we're not afraid to go into the very heart of Pakistan if we have to, in order to dismantle terror. And that's the message that was sent out. That's the objective that has been achieved. That's point number one. Point number two, the Prime Minister in his statement had said that the ceasefire is a strategic pause. It is not a concession, sort of a concession. We have not withdrawn. We have paused. Our armed forces are ready and alert to move back, into action if needed. If Pakistan were to continue to support terrorism, India will resume military action. We are alert and we are ready, and we've demonstrated the military resolve that we need to demonstrate without straining our resources or risking stability. And that's point number two, that this is a pause and not a concession of any way. Number three, again, if you remember the first and the second press conferences that the military and the Foreign Service held together, where those two brilliant women were addressing us, they had said very clearly that we had chosen our targets and chosen our weapons in order to make sure that there were no civilian collateral damage, which means that once we picked a building or a target that we needed to attack, none of the buildings around it, none of the structures around it were damaged in any way. We only went after the one building that we wanted. That shows our military capacity, but also our restraint, because India made it very clear that we did not want to hurt any civilians or civilian infrastructure, and we did not want to attack any of their military infrastructure. Now, this is not something that Pakistan followed. As we know, Pakistan has attacked civilian infrastructure in India and attacked military infrastructure in India, and then India responded to that by the attack on the air bases. But India has been very clear that we did not want to escalate, and we did not target their military infrastructure to begin with. Already on our borders in Poonch, for example, over 20 people have been killed, more than 50 have been injured, and in our entire border towns, we've had reports of loss of public and private property. So an escalation would have led to more civilian loss. It would have led to displacement. It would have led to casualties, and would have led to a continued situation where people and citizens are living in fear. This is not something that India wanted. Number four, and this is really important, what our diplomatic stance has always been in India. India has always been a responsible nuclear power in the global community, and this is a really important diplomatic posturing stance that we have. India adheres to a no first use policy, which means we have the ability, but we will not be the first ones to use it. And we want to be seen, and we've always been seen as a country that handles these matters in a mature and measured fashion. Take, for example, if you look at it, right? Look at how we shared information. Measured, like proper set press conferences where questions were answered, evidence was shared, information was constantly shared, a constant reminder through those press conferences that we were non-escalatory. We did not want to escalate this matter. We were responding with an assertive military, but we were not actually escalating that matter, because India has always been historically, from the time of Nehru, and you can take some time to read this up, or leave me a comment if you want, a longer video on this. We've always been non-aligned, peacekeeping. We believe in peaceful coexistence. This is from Prime Minister Nehru onwards. We've always pursued, in the last 75 years, diplomatic engagement above all else, that we will talk it through. And we use force as an absolute last resort with limited objectives, stated objectives, which is what we've done well. Like the Prime Minister Modi pointed out yesterday, we now as a country have a new, a sort of new policy when it comes to this, which is that we have an assertive military and we have a diplomatic stance. And now those two things go together. So if you consider the surgical strikes, the air strikes that we've done in the past, and now Operation Sindoor, when it comes to Pakistan, what we're saying is that we are not afraid to cross over to LOC. We're not afraid to cross over the international border to make our point. If you continue to harbor terrorists, we will hit them in Pakistan as well. So our global positioning now, again, India is building itself as the leader of the global south. India is building itself in this role of, in our neighborhood with China and Pakistan and the other factors around us, that we are a democratic country with a strong citizenry. We are a stabilizing force in our neighborhood. We're a rule-abiding power. We're a diplomatic power, and we're a responsible, mature power in this neighborhood. And this is something that's really important to India as far as its global positioning is concerned, which is why it was important for us to deal with this matter in a mature way. And point number 5, this is important: war is bad for everybody. Even if you are the more powerful of the two, war is still bad for business, it's bad for property, it's bad for economy, it's bad for trade. It's not good for the stability of the country, it's not good for diplomacy, it's not good for global standing. And most importantly, just because you have the ability to crush someone doesn't mean you should. In a lot of situations, restraint is power. And India has displayed restraint. Just like we were taught by the spokespeople from the armed forces who spoke with us and who gave us those press conferences, and the Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri, restraint, measure, maturity is the way that India deals with these matters. So for the people on social media who are baying for blood and destruction, that's not who we are. Your television channels have led you to think that's who we are. We've never been that, and we're not that even now. Leave me a question or a comment on what you believe was India's stance. Do you admire it? Do you disagree with it? Do you question it? Because I think now that the conflict is over, it's time for us to ask and have our questions answered.